Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandy buying my card by Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and so stuff. This time we're covering set 12, Gravidia Masques. Yes, Gravidia. I remember so many fun games with this deck. Not like with me, of course, with my opponent, my friend who loves to say manifest my destiny and then pull the over. I have pulled the over successfully with Gravidia, but this one in particular is an interesting build because it's definitely not your traditional build, and I made it on like the choice of a whim where I was like, the deck doesn't like me. Maybe I should change something about it. And it was a drastic change. And at the end of the day, I decided, the last time I listened to my gut, it worked out well. So I did it here and I regret nothing of it. So let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? And see what we got. And then you guys can yell at me for the thing I know that I'm doing is stupid, but I don't care anyways. First up, we have our starter in Gravidia Dellen. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto and road plank 1 second draw card. It's just a free draw if you win second. There's not much more I can say about this. None of the ride line really requires Dellen, but might as well go for the full ride line for the theme, right? Then we have our over trigger. Anyone who's played against Gravidia in general knows what this is, and that is Star Dragon, DD, Infinitude, Eldo Breath. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Over trigger, you may have one over trigger in your deck. When you reveal it as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your against plus 1 for the turn. And if you revealed it during your judge check, activate its additional effect, which you can double the power and critical of all your throwing units until end of turn. Increase to double its power and critical when activated. Now, on the day I'm recording this, apparently we got a rule change or like a rule update on how the over trigger works, and basically it's like, if I remember correctly, if you boost something and then you pull the over, you don't get power equal to the boost or like whatever the power currently is with the boost. You get power without the boost. So like if you boosted 13k with an 8k, you're just going to get double the 13 and then you add the boost. You don't get added boost and then double that for a total of 48, or no, it would be 42. But either way though, being able to double the power critical of any unit is, or not just any unit, but your entire front row is pretty powerful, because that means everything on your front row, unless the crit was minus, has at least double critical. Something on your board has 2 million. And with Gravidia, who can double triggers, that is pretty much instant game for your opponent. So yeah, one of Eldo Breath. You can run the other overs, but I prefer game pressure, pretty much. Then we have our normal triggers. First, we run 3 copies of Star Aggression Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. It's an extra crit for pressure. I run 7 crits in total. You can run whatever crit you want in that spot, but I choose Star Aggression because he's my favorite. Then we have Patrol Robot Decker Cop, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Auto rear guard, at the end of battle, this unit boosted, put this unit to soul, choose one of you, it's 2k for the turn. All run, solid unit. Again, we have crit pressure, we have 7 crits, so you can pull them earlier, you can pull them when you're on Gravidia, just to, double the critical. I know I said like on Gravidia, when all of them have Gravidia in the names. Okay, when you're on Nordlinger, you can double their power and critical, but then also being able to give 2k by going to soul. While it's not amazing, it's also not bad, because granted, I haven't run into a soul problem yet, but something tells me it will happen one of these days, and when it does happen, I'll be glad to have this guy on backup. So for Decker Cop. And then we have 4 copies of All Military Connector. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continuous guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 Garrett, gets 5k shield. Being a 10k shield is very nice to have, and also being able to help increase your hand is nice. And when you combo it with either of the 2 Nordlingers, it does help to get your hand up by 2 cards. So all around nice draw, 4 of. And then finally, we have 4 copies of Alterate Spear Dragon. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, nothing special about it. I don't like the effect heals too much. I prefer the consistent 15k over the fluctuating 10 to 25k shields. But if you want to run the effect heals for better guarding overall, then by all means go for it, but I do prefer the normal heals. And then we move on to our grade 1s. First, we run 8 copies of probably your most important order by a long shot. No offense to the other one. This one I just use more. And that is Neatness Meteor Shower. Grade 1, set order after set orders play, put into your order zone, has no cost to it. You can have up to 16 copies of Neatness Meteor Shower in your deck. Auto when it's put into your order zone, you may soul charge 1. If it was put by your Vanguard's ability, you may draw a card. I still hate how currently right now, because if I remember correctly, Orphis only hits worlds from drop zone. The only card in Brandt that can actually trigger this effect, to my memory, is one of the 2 Nordlingers. Actually, to be more specific, the original Nordlinger, because for some arbitrary reason, the new Nordlinger Masques does not put things to order zone. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, please, because I really want to be wrong, because right now, in my mind, the only way to pull off that draw effect, which is so good, is to be using Nordlinger. Either way, though, neither effects are mandatory, so you don't have to draw if you don't want to. You don't have to soul charge, meaning you can prevent yourself from decking out. But of course, in the words of my friend, deck thing is deck winning, so you just soul charge and draw every option you get. Obviously, I don't do that, but it works for him, especially when he just pulls the over after saying manifest my destiny. I don't understand why it works for him and it doesn't work for me, but whatever. And then auto when it's put into your orders, when it's put in from your drop into your order zone, choose rank points, rear cards, and kill it. All around pretty solid because the whole point of both Nordlingers is to send a bunch of cards in your order zone at once into the drop zone and pretty much proc off their effects. And being able to kill a bunch of rear guards and eat this meteor shower is all around pretty solid. So, again, free soul charge and draw if you want to. Well, always guaranteed possible free soul charge, again, if you want to. And then if it was placed by Nordlinger, basically, you may get a free draw, which most people choose to do. And then obviously being able to kill rear guards, pretty solid. So we run 8 copies of it just because you like to see it as much as often and, free search power. Then we move on to our normal unit grade ones. First, we have 2 copies of Gravidia Abby, one of my favorites actually now, and she's a grade 1 with boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto placed on your rear guard circle. If your order zone has 3 or more meteorites, counterboss 1 to draw a card and choose up to 1 meteorite card from your hand and put it to your order zone. All around pretty solid. I remember she was the reason specifically why I wanted to make this deck unique in a phrase, because I don't know, I just really wanted to use Abby and I was getting like a gut instinct from it. And again, I'm glad I did that because I really thought I'd run into a CB problem. Turns out for some reason I don't. Believe it or not, when you run cards that you would think would put you into a CB problem, it doesn't put you into a CB problem. I don't understand why it works like that, but either way, being able to get a draw and then not a mandatory meteor play, but you can play a free one from hand is just all around nice because it's an extra meteor you get into the order zone and it can help for a long game play. So 2 of Abby, I see her often enough to the point where I've started to think that she's a 4 of, but I know there's only 2 copies of her in deck, so I mean, either way, I'll take it though, so 2 of. And then we have 2 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the ride deck of Gravidia Wells, and we all know I always save the ride line for last, so let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room before I get to the effect. Yeah, there are no PGs in this deck. So before everyone goes screaming on me, here's my reasoning for not running PGs. So when I ran the deck with PGs, there was a version of this with PGs. I need to confirm that for you guys. I would always end up in the situation where my hand is just triggers and PGs. That's literally how, like, every game, if it got past first grade, well, not necessarily first grade 3 turn, second grade 3 turn, that's pretty much what my hand was. All PGs and triggers, and the rest of my normal units were either persona rides that weren't worth calling, or everything else was in my damage zone. That's pretty much how it went out every single game. So I was like, I don't like having PGs, and I also don't feel comfortable calling them to board, because if the opponent lives, because I basically have to bake it on the trigger, and if I don't see the trigger, well, then I pretty much lost all my guarding power and lost the game. So I was like, well, if I'm going to force myself to lose anyways, I'm at least going to attack and lose. So I ran more aggressive units, so this is where the 2 PGs went, or 4 PGs went. 2 of them went to Abby, 2 of them went to Wells, and I tell you what, I regret nothing. I've been able to pull off more consistent attack every game. I have not had a problem getting units onto board. I don't have to worry about my hand being overrun with triggers because for some reason I see my triggers to the point where they show up when I want them to, but not to the point where I'm overloaded with them. And I am just kind of going all well with my side. So I don't regret dropping my PGs. Granted, this deck dies to, like, if a deck can get really high numbers and extra crit, like specifically both, then yeah, okay, then it's a problem, like Gandiva or Bav. But if it's not something like that, you're pretty much fine. Anyways, Wells, as I meant to do earlier, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when placed on Vanguard Circle, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose any number of meteorite cards, reveal them, put them to your hand, shuffle your deck. So here's how I tell if this deck likes me or not, how many meteors I proc off this effect, because I used to, when I still had PGs, either hit 1 or 2. Now, when I use Wells, I've hit 5. I've only used the deck 4 or 5 times, and every single game but one of them, I have consistently hit 5 meteorites off of this. I don't know why, I just have, and I've stopped questioning it. And then the other ability, the reason why I chose this one specifically to run in the main deck, and that is active rear guard once per turn. If your Vanguard is Gravidia Nordlinger, man, that sucked for me when I realized it had to be specifically Gravidia Nordlinger and not Gravidia Masques. Soul Blast 1, you up to 2 meteorite cards from your hand, put them into your order zone, and this uses 2k power for the turn. Again, the reason why I chose to put this at 2, that was the other issue too, that I would have a bunch of orders at hand. So, basically I ran this to mitigate that problem, and then, the PG kind of fixed itself. But, being able to send 2 orders from order zone into hand, especially with Gravidia Masques, well then again, Gravidia Masques sends them back to hand. You can't use it with this one because it's not Gravidia Nordlinger, but again, being able to send 2 meteorites from hand to order zone is pretty nice because it helps set up for either of their 2 costs. And then again, being able to search the top 7 for free for literally any number of meteorites is pretty solid. So 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the rad deck. Good grade 1. Once we get to Masques, kind of 50-50, but I mean, it's still nice to have, so take that as you will. And then we move on to our grade 2s. First, we run our 4 copies of our grade 2 order, Falling Hell Hazard. My favorite of the 2 of them in terms of art, my least favorite of them in terms of skill. I don't know why. Grade 2, set orders play, put it to your order zone. Continues when you would count the number of meteorite cards in your put from your order zone into the drop zone for the cost of your Vanguard's ability. It gets counted as 2 cards, meaning you can use either the 2 Nordlingers to either count this as 4 if you have 2 of them, or at least count it as 2 if you have 1 of them, meaning you have to overall send less meters to the drop zone, which is nice to have. And then auto, when this card is put into your drop zone from the order zone, bind this card, choose an opponent's rear guard, and murder it. Okay, all around pretty solid. You can bind it, which means you can't recycle it, but there is technically a way to recycle this into the drop zone and still get the retire off. But then also you get to retire something as well, and again, it does it for free. So all around, very solid order to have. It's a nice 4-of. If you have all of them in order zone, technically they count as an 8-card drop, and again, they get a free kill. And it's not necessarily a guaranteed go to bind because according to rulings, there is a way to get this back into your hand before you bind it. So for Falling Hell Hazard. And then we have our normal unit grade 2s. First, we have 2 copies of Gravidia Lagael. Grade 2 at 5k shield, 10k base. Okay, this was pretty much here on a whim. Like, I could choose it to use. There was a specific grade 2 I really wanted to use, but the reason I didn't is because the grade 2 I wanted to use was the one that, like, you know, where it's sent to soul. You can, if your Vanguard, I think, is Gravidia Norlinger, you can call it to back or rear guard circle. And originally I was going to run that, but then I realized it has to call itself to back or rear guard circle, and it doesn't get boost. So literally this one over that for the simple reason it didn't get boost. Either way though, you know, on it during the battle it contains rear guard that she attacks. If your order zone has 3 or more meteorites, when your opponent cards from a guard circle, then it's called 2 or more at the same time. It's nice pressure, you know, like I always barely have 1 under for her skill, so I'll like always have 2 cards in my order zone. But you know, being able to force out extra hand cards when she swings is nice, especially when you're seeing double triggers, or even if you don't, if you manage to put your opponent in a situation where they have to guard, it's just nice that you're forcing out hand cards. So either way, 2 copies. She is not the greatest grade 2 by a long shot, but she is still very solid and can force out 2 cards. And then we have 3 copies of Gravidia Maru. You know, it's another interesting thing too. This card was at the same copies as it was in the other deck. And yet for some reason in this deck, I see it a lot more consistently. I'm just saying, it's weird that you can just change 1 card that had nothing to do with deck thinning, and then you just add in something else, and then somehow it fixes every single problem in the deck. So, just saying. Either way, Maru is a grade 2 with a 5k shield, 10k base, and auto rear guard. When she attacks, choose up to 1 meteorite card from your hand, put it to your order zone, and if you put a card, this unit gets 5k power for the turn. All around, pretty solid. It's not a mandatory meteor put, but if you do choose to put one, you get it for free, which is nice, and then also she'll get plus 5k, meaning she's a 15k. You persona ride 25k, see any number of triggers, you know, 35, 45, etc. So around Maru's a pretty solid grade 2, help set up the order zone for the following turn, or hell, you can even do it the turn that you use this with, which is great because she can work with either Gravidia. It doesn't matter what your Vanguard is either, meaning you can do this while you're at grade 2. All around, she's just very solid for setup plays and an easy 3-up for me. Then we have 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of our final grade 2, and that is Gravidia Barringer. So grade 2 is up 5k shield, 10k base, auto when placed on Vanguard circle or rear guard circle. If you have a meteorite in your order zone by soul blasting 3, draw a card and she gets plus 5k power for the turn. Okay, you know, pretty solid. It's a free draw and it's a extra 5k. I'm just going to say this as a voice of warning now. If you don't hit this meteor shower off of either wells or in your opening hand, which has happened to me twice so far, not in this deck, just like in general of my time of playing Gravidia, then you don't get that skill off because unless you went second and you actively use Decker Cop to, you know, get a soul charge, which is again is what Decker Cop would be useful for, you don't get that draw, which sometimes can screw you over. So, you know, being able to get a draw in a 5k is pretty nice by hitting 1 meteor, and then the ability that doesn't matter because you're not going to find a way to bounce this from your soul and or drop zone into your hand, but if you found a way to do it, continues to be rear guard. If your drop in order zone has a total of 5 or more set orders, it gets with 5k power active on both players' turns. So again, like the turn you would place that would be a 20k if you manage to meet that requirement, but there's no way to bounce this from soul into hand and no way to bounce it from drop into hand. So I mean, take that as you will. 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Then we move on to our grade 3s. First, we have 2 copies of our grade 3 normal order, and that is Mask of Hydrogum or Masques of Herodogam, if you listen to me. Grade 3 normal order, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, up to 1 unit card, Draco Tree or Masques' card name from among them, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. So I'll run pretty solid. It's a free top 5 search. You can use it to search the Draco Tree cards, which, by the way, I don't run the Draco Tree cards because I don't like them. This deck already has space problems as is, and I did not want to run either of them. And then also, but being able to search the Persona is nice. And then Act Drop Zone. If you have a grade 3 Vanguard without Masques' card name, reveal a grade 3 with Masques' card name from your hand, and write the revealed card's cost per stand. If you roll, put this card into your soul. If your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, and you do not Persona this turn, you have to Persona. All around, pretty solid. It's a free plus 10k and a draw if you went second, and then also it can get you soul, which is somewhat nice in this deck, especially if you are somehow running into that soul problem. But again, also being able to just search the Masques all around pretty solid. So 2 Mask of Hydrogum, and if you already have 1 in hand, then you can just immediately ditch it for ride deck fodder and then just use this go from drop zone. So 2 copies of it, very solid order. I see it decently enough, but that doesn't allow me to bring back up the fact that this deck was like specifically made for me pretty much. So if you use this and it doesn't work, it's not because the deck is bad, just because it just doesn't work for you, as evidenced by the last game my friend played with this deck, where pretty much everything that could go wrong did. It's not in the sense that he played it bad, it's in the sense that like every card that was kind of needed just didn't show up, when for me they show up consistently. Like for example, all 3 of his Masques were in the bottom 10 cards of his deck. I'm not kidding you. The first one showed up at the 9th card after he had done his drive check. And then the last two were, believe it or not, it was actually, well, no, the last two were 7 and 6 cards in his deck. So, I mean, that's kind of just how it is. But for me, they show it consistently. Then we move on to our normally grade 3s, 3 copies of Gravidia Baku Birito, grade 3, 200% at 13k base. Auto, when this unit is placed on rear guard circle. Soul Blast 1 to choose a meteorite from your drop zone, put it to the order zone, and then can change rear guard during your turn. If your opponent's rear guard is retired, this turn it gets plus 5k power, and 3 more retired get a critical. All around, pretty solid, being able to bounce any meteor from drop zone back into the order zone is pretty nice, so you can use Falling Hell Hazard discard fodder. Hell, you can use this as discard fodder and proc off it. And then also, again, by being able to get extra 5k just by 1 unit being retired, but if you retire 3, it becomes an extra critical. Pretty much guarantees the deck's pressure because Elder Breath is kind of this deck's win con. Like, it can win without Elder Breath, but Elder Breath is like instant game unless your opponent has 3 PGs on backup. But this thing's skill to get the extra crit if your opponent basically went wide and you killed their board. Yeah, that's where this thing comes in really helpful because being able to make the Vanguard, who's probably double critical, or at least pressure for double crit, and this thing a guaranteed double crit, definitely makes your opponent be a little bit careful with their guarding and aggressive play from then on forward. So 3 copies of Gravidia Baku Birito, and we're about to get into a combo that involves it and Falling Hell Hazard, so we'll see what else we got with it. And then we have Gravidia, Nordlinger Masques, one of my least favorite of them just because of how its skill works and how it cannot be abused for some arbitrary reason with Wells over here. But anyways, continuous is card Columbia, written from a grade 3 with Nordlinger's card name, grade 3 10% 13k base, and then act Vanguard Circle once per turn, remove a card with Nordlinger's different card name from this unit from your hand, soul or drop zone, shift to 3 meteorites from your drop zone and put them into your hand. Okay, pretty solid, 3 free meteorites back to hand. Here's the issue. Again, I say, for some reason, it doesn't put any of them to order zone. Like, it's fine if it was only, like, choose up to 2 and put them into your order zone. Or, hell, even if it just copied Orphis word for word, choose up to 1 order from your drop zone and then just place it into your order zone. That would have been fine because at least you could proc off this effect from it. However, being able to return 3 meteorites to hand, don't get me wrong, it's nice, but, like, at the same time, it's kind of, it would be better to just play them straight from the drop zone, because then you can save cost on this boy, and while it kind of helps this one, it basically doesn't do anything for this one, so I don't know, it could be more useful with it. But then as other goes, auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard, by counterblasting 1 and putting any number of meteorite cards from your order zone into your drop zone, for every 2 meteorite cards you put to the drop for this cost, you have to 1 unit card from your hand, call it your rear guard, and if 4 more meteorites are put to the drop zone for this cost, your trigger units activate twice on the battle. So I'm pretty solid, so you can, you can double over trigger, double critical trigger, etc. But also being able to send this to drop zone as 4 cards allows me to get into the combo, where say, for example, you set 1 to the drop zone and you send 2 of these to the drop zone, so you did send a total of 4. You call 2. One of them you make this thing, the other one doesn't matter what it is, but let's just say for the sake of example, it's Maru. You can use this thing, you get the double trigger effects, but you can use this thing skill when it's placed before Falling Hell Hazard goes off, according to the rulings I've seen. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you Soul Blast 1, you bounce it to hand before you use the skill, and then you use the skill to choose an opponent's rear guard and murder it, so you don't have to bind it. So, all around, pretty solid. I don't know if that's right or wrong, so someone correct me if it is wrong or if it's right, but according to the rulings I've seen, that's how it works. But, being able to get multi-attack is pretty nice, and this is the other reason why I dropped the PG, because a lot of times I would get to that point in the game where it would be worth calling something, except my entire hand was either orders, triggers, or PGs, and everything else was either somehow still in deck or damage zone. So I just actively chose to drop the PGs for it, and again, I regret nothing from that decision. But, being able to do multi-attack is solid, though the real pressure is within its ability to double trigger effects and make it for 1 cost less, because the original Gravidia had to do cost 5, but also being able to bounce 3 meters to hand, which again isn't great, but it does at least decently combo well with Abi over here and Marut. So Aron, very fair card. 3 copies of it. I don't run it at 4 because I see all 3 respectively enough, and my friend just got really unlucky that one game, so take that as you will. Then we have our last card in the deck, one of in the main deck, one of in the right deck, of Gravidia Nordlinga. Believe it or not, even though there's only 1 copy in the main deck, I've seen that 1 copy every single game. Whether it's by soul charging it, so I can use it for Masques, or whether it's just by normal drawing it so I can Persona Ride in case I can't go into Masques, I have somehow seen that copy every single game. It's like Gold Rutile with Morikawa back in Season 1, where, you don't remember, he used a trial deck in like a shop tournament, and he literally drew Gold Rutile every single game and wrote it every single time, and even the characters pointed out there's only one copy of it in deck. Yeah, that's pretty much how I was working here. I'm consistently drawing that with Gravidia no matter what. Anyways, grade 3, 10%, 13k base, auto when placed on the Vanguard circle. You can search your deck for up to 2 meteorites, put them to your order zone, shuffle your deck. Okay, all around pretty solid. I like how before we got to this point in the game with set 12, I would always like set at least one Falling Hell Hazard and maybe either set another one or set a Neatness Meteor Shower, and now I specifically only set 2 Neatness Meteor Showers if there are any left in the deck to draw 2. Speaking of which, the last game I played with this deck, I had drawn all the meteors except for one, and I mean drawn out all the meteors as in I drew them normally. Well, thanks to Wells, searching top 7 and getting 5 of them. But I had drawn all the meteors except for one Falling Hell Hazard before I got to grade 3. I am not kidding with you. That actually happened in a game. It's stupid, but it worked. And I won that game because I just outrushed my opponent. But, being able to set 2 orders for free is pretty nice. So you can either use it to set up your order zone with Falling Hell Hazard, or you can use 2 Neatness Meteor Showers to Soul Charge and draw, or just Soul Charge, or do neither really. All around pretty solid. And then Auto Vanguard, when it attacks by counterblasting 1, you can put 1 or more meteorites from your from your order zone into your drop zone. At the end of that battle, this unit gets attacked 15k power. If you put 3 or more, it gets a crit, and if you put 5 or more, trigger effects double. So all around pretty solid. Again, this one is technically better in the sense that you can do like your trigger effects for 1 meter drop less, but I do actually like Nordlinger more because I don't really use the call skill that much unless like I have to win that turn. But being able to become a 28k swing guaranteed is pretty nice, and being able to make itself double crit is nice, and then finally being able to double trigger effects is all around pretty nice. So one of in the ride deck of Nordlinger, one of in the main deck, can set orders for free so you can get good setup, is a 28k double critical, well at least 28k double beat stick, and then possibly most likely double critical with double triggers. So all around very solid grade 3, very powerful hits for numbers, and you can use your meteorite combos to murder everything on your opponent's board before they can do anything. And if they went wide and you have this thing on the board, well, 18k double critical at the least with possible double triggers coming on it. Then that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun to play. Like, I didn't like Gravidia a lot. I like barely liked it at all before we got to set 12. And then when we got to set 12, I still didn't like when I was running PGs. And then I dropped the PGs. I began to like it more. Does this deck win often? Relatively, yes. Actually, its win-loss record is like, I've played, okay, this deck in total has played like 10 games, so, and its win-loss record is 50-50 actually, so, it's like pretty solid. Like, obviously it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's built for me, and it works the way I want it to. So, I'm this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.